Welcome to OAA Now, your home for Oakland Activities Association news and information. Here's your host, Sammy Taramina.
Welcome to OAA Now. I'm Sammy Taramina, blogger of the Dragons Den blog of Inside the OAA, and one of the hosts between 2 minutes from Right Neighborhood Television. I'd like to welcome our friends watching Knoxville Community Television and also those watching on YouTube. Got a great show to talk to you about today. Of course, we got a lot of football, a lot of volleyball. We'll have some basketball news to talk about in the third segment. Of course, I released my 2 early top 10 to start the way early season heading into the year coming up later in November. But let's go with football first. Of course, a lot of football went around surrounding the league this week. Of course, the biggest win I thought personally was a upset that nobody saw coming. It happened to the Ferndale Eagles. Of course, they played Avondale, and Avondale winning that one 21-13. So it was a big win for Eckateria. Of course, the reason why this is a big win for Avondale and why I think this could give Avondale an opportunity to turn around their season. Of course, this was a football team that was really, really desperate, of course, needing a win, and they ended up getting one. But it also kind of puts another team that's been really much a big surprise in there, and that's Hazel Park. And you really look at, of course, Hazel Park now sits at 2-0 in there. We'll go over Hazel Park in a minute, but back to the game between Avondale and Ferndale. This was a monster win for Avondale. They started off the year 0-2, of course, having that really bad loss to Troy, and then they were just completely shocked at home by Hazel Park. Of course, both were home losses. But to go on the road and beat a very solid Ferndale team, a team that made the playoffs last year for the first time since 2008, it was really, really incredible to see at least how much progress Eckateria's team made. But also, it gives Avondale a lot of confidence when you look at how that game unfolded. I mean, of course, Ferndale was talking a lot about Blue Championship, that they have an opportunity to win. Now, they still have a chance to win the Blue, but I think now with this win, it opens up the door for a team like an Avondale or a team like a Hazel Park, to say, you know what, we can go up there and compete with Ferndale. I mean, we can go up there and compete with them. We can give them fits. I mean, Avondale's already beaten Ferndale, and of course, Hazel Park still plays Ferndale later in the year. I think that's going to be at Hazel Park. But, when you look at Ferndale, I mean, this is a football team that's very good. This is a team that put a 50 against Lamphere, and then, of course, they put up a whooping on Farmington the week prior to this one. So this was a big win for Avondale. For Ferndale, now their schedule is going to get a little bit tougher because when you look at the fact that they have to go back on the road. They have to go on the road, play Birmingham Detroit Country Day. It's going to be a really tough matchup for them. I mean, for Ferndale, that's a game they need. It's that matchup between them and the Yellow Jackets. And I think at the end of the day, when you look at Ferndale, I think this Eagle team could be in a world of trouble. And that's saying a lot because when you look at Ferndale, the schedule doesn't get any easier, considering who they've got to play. And you look at Ferndale, they got to play, besides Troy Country Day, they still got to play North Farmington, who got a really nice win the other day. Of course, big win for Bob Cheza, of course, his big win over Pontiac. We'll go over that in a minute. But then they still got to play Royal Oak. They still got to play, and then, of course, they got to play Hazel Park, of course, in that on October the 13th. So that's going to be a huge game for Ferndale before they close out the year. Taking on Dearborn at the Fort. So for Ferndale, this is a tough loss. But for Avondale, they got to keep continuing this momentum. And I think for Ferndale, it's going to be, I think for both teams, we'll see where Avondale's at because they got a tough one coming up this week at North Farmington. So we'll see what happens in that matchup. Let's talk about North Farmington. Speaking of them, of course, they beat Pontiac 26-16, a huge win for Bob Cheza. Of course, when you look at the Raiders, of course, this was a team that trailed 16-7 at halftime. I mean, they found a way to bounce back. Of course, this was a huge win for Bob Chiesa. Of course, But for Pontiac, this was a tough one. I thought Pontiac made progress. I thought both teams made some progress in this one. Pontiac, of course, proven that they played a really good first half despite having only 20 kids on the roster. And you look at North Farmington, of course, this proves, they can compete with they could compete and win some games. This is North Farmington's first win since 2015. And that's huge because this is a football team that went through a lot. They've changed coaches. But Bob Chiesa, who's taken over that team, they were blown out by Greenville, blown out by Royal Oak, and now to get this win, this is a good win for North Farmington to start hopefully a tradition, that would get them to the top, So good win for Bob Chiesa. Of course, I talked to him on email the other day, and he was very happy about the win, So when you look at that team, North Farmington, I think North Farmington's on the way up, and I believe that this football team could do some damage going forward. And for Pontiac, Pontiac, the progress. It's coming. For Pontiac, it's coming. They just got to stay the course. It might not be about wins and losses for this team, but for them to put together a really good first half, a really strong first half, it really tells me that Pontiac could be a team on the rise to keep an eye on, especially heading in the future. Now, as for first-year coach Charles Tolley, it's going to be a challenge for this team. And he said that they're players in different positions, and because of lack of numbers, and But for Pontiac right now, they've got to create a culture. They got to create a program, and that team has not been the same in the last 5 years. They've really struggled, and for Pontiac, this is an opportunity. That first half was a sign of progress. Now they just got to put two halves together. If they do that, that win's going to come. So for Pontiac, it's about progress. For North Farmington, it's the same thing. Of course, progress, big win for North Farmington. Now they got Avondale. We'll see. It's a big game for both teams and see where both teams are at. So let's look at another team that's on the rise in the Blue Division. Of course, it's the Hazel Park Vikings. Hazel Park, they stunt their defense. Of course, their defense last year was very atrocious. And you really look at their defense the last 5 seasons has been just completely abysmal. Now, when you look at, of course, Hazel Park's got a new defensive coordinator in there, and his name is Gary Griffin. Of course, Griffith comes over from Troy. He's a longtime football coach at Troy. And he has really put a stamp on this defense. When you limit a high school team to just 7 points like what Hazel Park did, that's a huge accomplishment for Coach Kyle Riley's team. And, for Hazel Park to win 2 games, this is the most games they have won since last year. Of course, they were 2-7. Now, if they win another one, that would be the first time they've won 3 games since 2011. That's saying a lot. If Hazel Park keeps doing this, they got a senior heavy team. There's no doubt about this. But for Hazel Park, they just keep on going. If they keep going up, winning games, they have a lot of talent. They have the senior experience based on their talent pool and their defense. And it basically, for Hazel Park, this is a team that could be a sleeper in that Blue Division. They still got a very tough schedule. Their only loss this year came to Warren Fitzgerald, and they were very competitive with the Spartans in that one. They only lost that one 32-20. So, Hazel Park's made a lot of progress. They got that big win against Avondale on the road. That's huge. And then, of course, to beat Royal Oak at home. That's also huge. Now, they got to play Farmington. Farmington this year has been a little bit of a disappointment. We lost to Chandler Park Academy 42-21. But for Hazel Park, they're going to be, it would not surprise me this week if Hazel Park is favored against Farmington. Because when you look at that matchup, Hazel Park, senior experience, senior talent, Farmington having to go to Hazel Park, that's not going to be an easy game for Farmington. And Farmington gives up a lot of big plays. And Hazel Park's a team, got a senior quarterback in Damon Edward. Damian Ewald, of course, I think he can make some big plays down the field, and I think it's going to create some problems. But I'm curious to see how they do against Farmington. Of course, Farmington, let's not forget that they've been a real much disappointment, this year. Of course, they're 0-3. I mean, they've still got defensive problems. They can't score. I mean, offensively, they're offensively challenged. They've only scored 37 points this year, which is alarming. And, for Farmington, I think this football team's in a lot of trouble right now when you look at Farmington. They have to virtually win the table. And do I think they have a chance to do it? Sure. But it's not going to be an easy game. It's not going to be easy for them because you look at, of course, Highland Park, Chandler Park Academy. I mean, it's the football team that, they were decent. They were decent. But when you look at Farmington, how many points they get? They get 42, which is that's not good. And to lose that game like that, that's never a good omen. And to say the least, that is pretty much scary, to say the least. So, that's very interesting to say the least what happened there. For Farmington, I think Farmington's a world of hurt right now. I mean, and it's unfortunate, but it's looking more and more like it. Their defense is a mess. Their offense is a mess. I don't know if they have a shot against Hazel Park. I really don't. So that's my thoughts on that. I think Hazel Park right now looking very promising right now, but Farmington, I think they've got some issues right now to address, and that's something that you got to address. Let's go over to the White Division. We'll recap some of those games. Of course, Oak Park beating Seaholm was perhaps kind of a little surprise for me because I thought Seaholm would have a lot more talent, a lot more experience, but Oak Park, the way they played, really wasn't much of a surprise there to see what happened there. Basically, with Oak Park, they're the team to beat in that White Division. They truly are. They got athletes there. I think I don't think they're going to lose again after what happened with them against Avondale, after what happened against Utica Eisenhower. So, when you look at Oak Park, talent all over the place. For Seaholm, now they're in a crossroads, and now for them they sit at 1-2, and they have to play Farmington Hills Harrison. This is a game I think Seaholm needs to win in the Maple Forest because this team cannot afford to go 1-3. If they go 1-3, I don't think they're making the postseason because when you look at who they still got to play, you got Groves who's rolling right now. You got, of course, Troy is starting to get it a little bit. You got Rochester who's like a mystery team. I can't figure this team out. We'll go over them in a minute. But for Seaholm, I think they're at a crossroads. I mean, for them, they have to get this game. If not, they have to get the Harrison game. If not, it could very well be a missed season for this team. So, but for Oak Park, of course, they're rolling right now. For Seaholm, they've got to figure some things out. And, they have to win that game against Harrison. If they don't, I think they're done. I really do. Troy Rochester, of course. Troy, this is their best. I think this is a huge win for Troy. And Coach Chris Frazier, of course, they are now 2-1 on the season. They knocked off Rochester 28-20. Of course, the 2 wins are the it's a huge progress step for Troy. Of course, they have not been over 500 since 2012. But for Troy, the schedule is going to get tougher when you really look at that schedule going forward. They still have to play Groves. They still have to play Harrison. They still have to play Oak Park, Seaholm. That's not going to be easy for Troy. But for Troy, they got something. They got a very good running back in Turn Kennard. They got a good their wide receivers are starting to get. They have a quarterback that can play. I mean, for Troy, this is a opportunity for them to do some damage. Now, it's going to get a lot tougher for them. But for Troy, this 2-1 start's really, really huge for them, for their confidence and for their psyche. And for them right now, they are rolling right now. For Rochester, a lot of expectations for this team. I'm very disappointed with how expectations have gone for this team. I mean, when you have a senior experience-led team, you have a senior-heavy team, I mean, this team's got problems. And, they've got some big, big problems because now you got a tougher schedule coming up. You still got, look at Rochester. Looking at them this week, they've got to play. They got Berkeley coming up. So Berkeley's a matchup where Rochester has to win that game. If not, I think there's going to be I think Aaron Vernon's in a lot of trouble right now when you look at that team. This is a team that really has to figure things out. And Rochester right now is a team that really has to figure things out to get things fixed. If not, then this could be maybe an 0 season. So, so for Rochester, I think this is a really dangerous time right now for the Falcons. And the way they're playing right now, for them, what bothering me is they've only scored 26 points in the entire season. That's not going to get it done. Your defense, I've known about the defensive issues. They've got some problems on that defensive side of the football. Harrison beat Stony Creek 47-8. Did not see this one coming. Now, they did celebrate Harrington by naming Harrison's athletic complex to John Harrington. But I didn't see 47-8 coming. What I also didn't see was 40-0 coming for in that one, because I thought Stony Creek, in my opinion, would have been competitive in this one. I didn't think, giving up 47, that says a lot about Harrison what they got. But for Stony Creek's got some problems offensively, and you really look at the problems with this team, and it's really affected their defense. Addressing the offensive line issues, of course, I know Bob Lancey at Media Day was very concerned about how many hits Frank Potesma was taking. And it looks like he's taking a lot more hits. But for Stony Creek right now, sit 1-2 right now, they're okay. They're in an okay spot. They have to win the Troy game, though, this week. If they don't win the Troy game, I think this could be another long year for Coach Bob Lancey and his team. But he clearly's got some issues up front. And I think that's something that they have to address. For Harrison, it's keep on playing what they've been doing. They've been doing very well since their loss to East Grand Rapids. And East Grand Rapids is one of those top teams in the league in the on the west side of the state in the Ottawa Cat Conference. They just beat Lowell the other night. And Lowell's a pretty darn good team. So, for Harrison, it's keep playing what they're doing, putting up 47 points. They gotta do well. They're 2-1, big one at Seaholm coming up in the Maple Forest. It's gonna be a tough matchup to say the least in that one. So for Harrison, it's keep doing what they're doing. They're starting to get it a little bit, and that's a good omen for Coach John Harrington's team in that one. Let's go to the red. Of course, when you look at the red recap, of course, Clarkson's big win over Bloomfield Hills is huge. Of course, they overcame Clarkson had to score 3 times in the final late in the fourth to pull off a big win for them. Of course, scored 21 straight points. Of course, they have Josh Cantu running the ball, going on Michael Flugel. And, of course, their offensive line is one of the best I think is going to be in the state. So when you look at Clarkson, this is a team I think can do some damage. And they got a big one, West Bloomfield, coming up. But let's look at Clarkson's. Let's look at the Wolves, of course. They're going to ride that line against West Bloomfield, and they're going to ride that line throughout the rest of the year. Of course, when you have a line involves 2 freshmen in there who are very talented, to go along with Noah Nicklin and Spencer Newblatt, it's going to be an interesting to see what happens with Clarkson. Of course, you have a guy named Nate Ubali, he's very good. You have Tyler Houston, of course, he's starting to come along. But for Clarkson, it's basically all set up by that line. Their offensive line is one of the best. I think one of the best in the state, and they proved it like that. Now, Bloomfield Hills, of course, let's not forget, got Ty Zazinski and John Paddock, and they were very instrumental in that upset against West Bloomfield. And you really look at that, they almost pulled it off again. They almost had them. They had them. But, what happened in that game was, Clarkson's offensive line and running game wore them down, and that's what happened here. And that was a big win for Clarkson. Clarkson's strength at team is their offensive line. They have Nate Ubali at quarterback. You have two very good running backs, Josh Cantu and Michael Flugel. You basically can afford, to have Flugel play both sides. I mean, because the way Cantu's playing. So, for Clarkson, it's a big one for them. For Bloomfield Hills, it's back to drawing board, but this is a team to be reckoned with this year. It's Bloomfield Hills. Really is. Really is. Let's go to Adams and Oxford. That was 33-13 in favor of Adams. When you look at that one, Oxford and Adams, it was pretty tight for about a half. Of course, it was really, really close, but Adams pulled away late in that one. But it tells me Adams can be very good, and Adams is a very good team when you really look at, does this team have a quarterback controversy? Of course, you look at, Connor Ferris, who was very huge in that Lake Orion game where he went nuts on the Dragons secondary. And then you look at a guy like Zach Solon, who was huge against Oxford, of course, running that the veer option attack. And I think, it really wore Oxford down in that one. Of course, Oxford's not a very deep team, but, it kind of wore them down. And that's why you see a score like this was 33-13 was because it kind of wore them down based on depth. For Oxford, I think they're fine. They got a tough match coming up with Southfield Arts and Tech, which is going to be a really tough matchup for them on the road. But, for a team like Adams, this is a good win for them. For Oxford, they got to address some things. They got to address their depth. They got to address their attrition. You know what I mean? So that's something that Coach Bud Riley's going to have to address going forward. It's going to be that attrition. Yeah, they sit 1-2, but they've got to address it. And then, of course, we have Southfield Arts and Tech and Troy Athens. Of course, the Warriors bounced back, winning that one 50-20. So that matchup really was not much of a contest. Of course, the Warriors, John Darby was huge. Matt Gilbert was huge. Their depth was huge. They wore Troy Athens down, and Troy Athens scored 20 points. It's not bad. Scoring over 20 points is not bad in a football game, but giving up 50 is not good. But we'll see what happens. That's an interesting game between Lake Orion and Troy Athens coming up. And for Southfield Arts and Tech, it's just keep on rolling the boat. You know what I mean? Basically for that. And for Troy Athens, it's basically getting back on track. So they got to get back on track and see what happens going forward. And last but not least, West Bloomfield and Orion. Of course, that matchup was 49-21 in favor of West Bloomfield. Of course, H.A. Abbott was responsible for having 4 touchdowns in that one. Bryce Beasley had 5 in that matchup. Lake Orion's second. I thought Lake Orion's effort was there. I really thought that this Dragons' effort was there. But, they have to address some problems in the secondary. Now, there's nothing you can do about West Bloomfield, especially because they have 5-6 Division I recruits on there. But a lot of those players that did the scoring for West Bloomfield were Division I recruits. And, Orion really didn't stand a chance in the secondary. So, but for this Dragon team, they have to win Southfield Arts and Tech. They have to win Clarkston. They have to win out now basically to try to get back in the playoffs for the second straight year. So this team's got a lot riding against them right now. And they have a lot. And I think missing Johnny Hackett really hurts this team. I really do. And that's been hurting this team. Is when you miss a dynamic player like Johnny Hackett, I think it impacts his team. And I think missing him really hurts. But they have some progress. I'm not pressing the panic button yet on this Dragon team, but it's pretty close. For West Bloomfield, that game with Clarkson's huge for them. They got to keep on winning. So that's not going to be an easy game. So we'll see what happens. We'll go over the matchups in the third segment, of course, along with the basketball segments as well. So, okay, now when we come back, we're going to talk about volleyball here. We're going to recap the Freedom Tournament and also the Novi Invitational here on OAA Now. Welcome back to OAA Now. I'm Sammy Termini here. We're going to recap the volleyball invitationals from this past weekend. Of course, when you really look at, and of course, I did release a new top 10 for girls volleyball early on, hanging in the league play. But let's recap the tournaments that occurred last weekend. Of course, the Program Cup, which took place over in Wixom. Basically, that was won by Birmingham Marion. Of course, Birmingham Marion's got a new coach in Lauren Duquette. So basically, of course, Lauren Duquette, we know, came over from Rochester. Of course, she resigned from Rochester last season, but she ended up taking over the gig at Birmingham Marion when Angela Kalzinski stepped down. So interesting hire, in my opinion, to hire Lauren Duquette. I think, it's an interesting hire, to say the least. Now, a couple teams were at the Program Cup. Of course, Troy was there. Rochester was there. Those were the two well-known teams that were there. And of course, the Novi Invitational, that was a crazy tournament that occurred last weekend. So, let's look at the Program Cup first. Of course, what happened in that one was Rochester went into the copper final of the tournament. Of course, there's about, I think, 24 teams that went to that tournament. But Rochester was in the Program Cup final in the copper division. They ended up losing that one to Birmingham Detroit Country Day. But when you look at Rochester, they got a lot of experience back. They've got a ton of talent on that team. And you really look at, of course, the coaching departure of Lauren Duquette. I think that, I don't know if that's really put an impact on this team, but for Rochester, I really think for them going forward, they're going to have to build. They're going to have to build that new system up. They're going to have to build a new culture up there, and I think they're starting to do that. And you look at Rochester, they could be in a division race in the white division this year with Adams. But when you look at a team, you got to look at other teams in that league. I think it's going to be a challenge for them. But Adams right now looks like they could be the team to beat in that white division. Of course, Bridget Harding's a really good coach over there. And I think, when you look at Rochester, they could challenge, but we'll see. But you guys got to look at a team like Harrison. Of course, Harrison coming down from the red division. Of course, they got a well-coached, well-oiled machine there. North Farmington's another team to look at as well. So Adams will have their fair share of issues, but Rochester's a team I think could be a team on the rise. And, they had that rough loss in the copper final of the Program Cup in that tournament. Another team that was there was Troy. And, of course, Tom Vigilant's team, they have some very good players. Of course, Fran Elliott, Fran Rayo is one of them. I really like what she's developed to go along with Jessica Robinson and Kelsey Moeller. When you look at what happened in that tournament, they were in the gold division of the Program Cup. They ended up taking third in that tournament. Tom Vigilant's got a really good team. He's got when you have a Division I college prospect in Jessica Robinson, and you're building that talent around her, when you have Kelsey Moeller there, you have a Fran Elliott there, you're going to be stacked. You're loaded. And I mean that. Troy's going to be a load. The only concern I have about the Colts, and this is honesty, is you have three good players on there. You have a college-bound star player on there. How are you going to build that team around them? And I think Tom Vigilant's done a really nice job building that program. And when you look at Troy and the fact that this team moved up from the white division to the red division, now you're playing some really good state powers in there. You got Orion, Clarkson, Blue Bay Hills, Stony Creek, Seaholm, Oxford in there. That's not easy. So when you look at playing in the red, I think being in that gold division in the Program Cup really says a lot to where this team is at. Now, they lost a really tough one in the Program Cup. They really lost but when you finish third in that division, and you've lost 4 games this year, all the state-ranked teams, that says a lot. That really says a lot about this team. And yet Troy could be a favorite once they get in the playoffs. And you really look at the playoff standpoint of that, Troy could be a team that could surprise some people. So when you look at Troy, this is a team that could do some damage going forward. Yes, they could. So Troy's a team to watch out for. I got them ranked number 4 in my top 10 right now. But let's look at, but they're going to be a dangerous team going forward. They will be. Let's look at the recaps over at Novi. Of course, this was won by Lake Orion. Of course, in that tournament. That was crazy. Now, Olympia Hills, they lost to Ann Arbor Huron in the quarterfinal. Now, Ann Arbor Huron's a good team. But I was surprised that Olympia Hills lost that one. They have a good program. When you look at players like Julia Cavaras, Alexa Roussel on that team, I mean, really surprised that Bob Hurdle's team lost that one. Really was. Now, Ann Arbor Huron's a good team. There's no doubt about that. But I thought they could have got into the they were in the playing game to the quarterfinal. Of course, that team would have played Lake Orion. And you know what happened there. So, I was very surprised Ann Arbor Huron beat Olympia Hills. Really was in that tournament. But Olympia Hills could be a really dangerous team. They got all the tough teams coming at home from their place. Still got to go to Stony Creek. That's not going to be an easy place to play. I mean, when you got Orion and Clarkson coming there, that's not easy. So for Olympia Hills, I think they're solid. I think they're set. Do I think I don't know if they're right now better than Birmingham Marion. I really don't know. But I think they're the team that could give Birmingham Marion everything it can handle. Maybe Adams. But I doubt it over at West Bloomfield. So when I look at those teams, I think a team that could really give problems to is going to be possibly Olympia Hills. So Olympia Hills right now is a team to keep an eye on going forward. I really do think it's going to be a really interesting to see what happens with them. And then, of course, you have Olympia Hills. And, of course, you have Birmingham Marion, of course, Lauren Duquette's team, new team, and Adams there. So that'll be very interesting to see what happens to them. And, of course, they could be a factor in the red because they got Orion, Clarkson coming to Olympia Hills this year. So really interesting to see what happens there. And of course, let's talk about another team that was there. Of course, it was Stony Creek. Of course, Stony Creek, they were at Novi, had a really tough time over there. Ross Talbot's team really had they were in the silver bracket over there. They did pretty well in that, to what I heard. But Stony Creek, they had their own tournament over in Waterford, ended up losing in that tournament. They bounced back, winning at Croswell Lexington a couple weeks ago. But for Stony Creek, they're like an up and down team right now. And I'm not being mean to Coach Ross Talbot's team, but they're an up and down team. I mean, it really is. I mean, they've got some promise, and then there's some times they don't look that good, and that's not good. So for Stony Creek, I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with them. But with the Cougars, I think it's going to be a team that could do some damage, and they could develop who they are. I mean, for them, for Stony Creek, this is a team I think they're going to be fine going forward. I really do. Problem is, I think they're in a really rough division. It's the red division. If Stony Creek was in the white division, I think, they could win the white division, in my opinion. They could give Adams everything it could handle. I mean, but you have Bianca Eisenhower in there, so playing in the red, I think, could help this team a lot. So for Stony Creek, I think it's about getting them ready for districts. Considering you do host and you have Bianca Eisenhower and Romeo in there, which is going to be really difficult going forward. So we'll see what they have. We shall see what they have. Clarkston, when you look at them, they've had some great showings. Kelly Averill-Pinner has done a really nice job with this team. When you look at Abby Malinowski, you're looking at some emerging talent coming. I mean, they've had some issues. They've had some issues, particularly against Lake Orion. I mean, they've lost them 3 times this year. That's shocking. It's alarming. But for Kelly Averill-Pinner, this is all part of the system, Basically, struggle early. It's a team that struggles early, then picks it up middle to late in the year, always in that in that league race. This is a team. I'm not pressing the panic button on Clarkson. And anytime you have Abby Malinowski's going to Michigan next year, it says a lot. I mean, Clarkson will be there. It wouldn't surprise me if Clarkson Orion plays in the district final. Really wouldn't. But, for Clarkson, great showing for them at Novi. They've had some great showings, of course, at Macomb, Dakota. They've had some great showings over at So Clarkson really behind Malinowski, letting that team grow to where they're going to be very formidable later in the year. And then you have Lake Orion. I mean, Lake Orion, when you look at this team, you really look at this team. They won. This is their third tournament they won this year. They won the Novi Invitational, but who they took out, which is really incredible. I mean, they took out Novi. They took out Ann Arbor here on the quarters. They took out Clarkston. And then to beat Novi, a two-time defending state champions. They have two Big Ten players on that team, Aaron O'Leary and Adriana Cannon. O'Leary going to Michigan, Cannon going to Northwestern. To beat Novi on their home field, in their home gym, that says a lot. That says a lot to know how good your team is. And here's a team that sits 26-3. Only two losses were to Notre Dame Prep and Farmington Hills Mercy. Both of them are really good teams in the Cat League. But when you look at Lake Orion, who they've got on that team, the two transfers, Sydney Smith coming over from Avondale, Paige Briggs coming over from Oxford. That says a lot. To put them together with Danielle Sargent, Wynn McCauley on that team, and Aaron Collins, that's scary. I mean, that is scary what Tony Scavado has done with that team. It really is. I mean, Lake Orion's a team I think could be a really dangerous team not only this year, but also in the future. So, especially when you have players that are buying in the program, playing very well. And I think Lake Orion's a team to be reckoned with maybe this upcoming postseason. So Lake Orion right now, making amends for what happened last year. But I think when you look at this team, this is a dangerous team going forward. I mean, Lake Orion's going to be a team to watch, for sure. Not only in the state, but not only in the league, but also in the state as well. So Lake Orion right now, riding on all cylinders right now. And that's usually a good sign. If this team stays healthy, look out. Really does. Okay, now we come back. We're going to talk about girls basketball, my preview for week 3. For both girls and boys basketball, preview week 3 for the football season here on OAA Now. Welcome back to OAA Now. I'm Sammy Tamina here. One team I forgot to mention for volleyball is Seaholm, of course. Seaholm had an interesting outing at Novi as well. But Seaholm should be all right this year for girls volleyball, this year for Coach Heather Lippert. So we'll see what happens with the Maples going forward in that process. So let's go to basketball a little bit, of course. I haven't talked much about basketball much in the podcast. So let's look at the teams who I'm high on, teams I'm not high on. Early on, let's go to girls basketball first. Of course, obviously the top team has to be Southfield Arts and Tech, especially with who they got back. Final Four team last year. When you look at Cheyenne McEvans, Alexa Johnson back, I mean, they also got some players coming back as well. I mean, this could be a really interesting team, but it's also, oddly enough, they've got an experienced team. Of course, a lot of the girls that they have back played at Southfield under Jamie Dixon. So that's going to be really interesting to see how this second year of Warriors basketball is going to be, considering, you lose Deja Church. I'm curious how they're going to do with that production, how they're going to replace that production. So, will McEvans and Johnson have to step up their games? And it's possible that, McEvans is coming off a really bad ankle injury. Should be ready to go for the season. So, so for the Warriors, they could be really solid again this upcoming year. Then, of course, we look at Clarkson. Clarkson's a team I think that might have the best starting probably one of the best starting fives in the entire county. Of course, when you look at Taylor Heaton, Kiana Anoit, who's probably going to be their power forward, Maddie Beck, their shooting guard. Then you have Kayla Lukenbach, Molly Nicholson in your post. Kayla Lukenbach's going to Oakland on a scholarship. And she also plays volleyball as well. So when you look at Lukenbach, and Nicholson, those are going to be some solid players in the interior. So, and Lukenbach's playing center right now over at on the volleyball team over at Clarkson. So, so this is going to be a team to keep an eye on for Coach Christine Rogers. I'm very curious to see how they're going to do with their bench. The bench production is very much a question key this year for Clarkston, and you really look at that. How do you address the bench is going to be something that's going to be having to be addressed heading into the season. Another team to look at, keep an eye on, is Lake Orion. And the Dragons, they have experience coming back, but they have a new coach in Mike Griffin. That's the question. Lake Orion has a very difficult non-league schedule. When you look at, they've got to play teams like Utica Eisenhower, Romeo. Those are not easy games. And then you have Groves on there. That's not easy. So when you look at this team, this team's got experience back. The question is going to be if the players and Griffin are on the same page. If they are, this could be a really good basketball team. This could be a really good basketball team with the talent that is back. And this team should be hungry after what happened last year, going through all the turmoil that went through this program. So, hopefully a clean slate could help this team out, but if the players and Griffin are not on board, it could be trouble. It could seriously be trouble. But if they're on the same page, this team could be a really, really good team. There's no doubt. That's going to be a team to keep an eye on. Another team to keep an eye on this year is going to be my good friend from Stony Creek, Kellen James's team. They have a very good player in Emily Uckett. Very good player. Very talented player. But whoever booked their non-conference schedule needs to call some guy named Joey Stiles. Here's why. Because who in the right frame of mind would open up the year against Walled Lake Western, who's very good, and Waterford Kettering, who's got nearly almost all their starters back? Stony Creek, it's inevitable this team's going to start 0-2. It is inevitable that they're going to start 0-2. And then they got to play in that tournament in Detroit, which is going to be rough. It's going to get them better, sure. But, it's going to get them better, and it's going to develop those players. But still, when you have a team that's that young, having to play that type of schedule, that is murder. And your district's not easy either. When you look at Romeo's solid, Utica Eisenhower's solid. You look at Adams in there, that could be an interesting team keeping on. Rochester could be an improved team, but my God, you look at Utica Eisenhower and Romeo in that district. That's brutal for Kellen James's team. That is brutal. You have a young team in there? You're having a tough schedule? What does that say? What does that say? It's dangerous. Dangerous. Says a lot, but it's dangerous. Next team to keep an eye on is North Farmington. Sam Cherney's back. They've got some questions everywhere else, especially the 4 spot. Of course, who's going to replace? They got to replace Kira Crockett, Soapy Muller. That's the other one they got to replace. I'm curious to see who replaces Soapy Muller in the interior. But Kira Crockett's a big loss for Jeff Simpson's team. Now you can put Paige Choke in there, and Molly Simpson are going to be your 2 starting guards. So both those players are going to step their game up for Coach Jeff Simpson's team. So it could be really interesting to see what North Farmington has. But their defense is going to be solid. They always have been. But that's a team to keep an eye on, especially in that red division. So we'll see what happens with North Farmington. In the white, a lot of people are high on Royal Oak because of Jessica Adams and Samantha Potter. I mean, the white looks very winnable for Royal Oak. They've really toughened up their non-league schedule. I like the fact they're playing Birmingham Marion in the middle of the year because Birmingham Marion's in their district. So, so that'll be very interesting to see what Royal Oak has this year. But I like this Raven team a lot. They just got to address some of their, especially their small forward position. I think really it's got to be addressed. They got some guards that can compete, but they got some questions elsewhere. West Bloomfield could be Royal Oak's biggest threat, along with Groves. Groves, they got a new coach in Jessica Weidler. They have an experienced team back. Losing Shea Carter really hurts this team. So when you look at Avondale, when you look at Groves, Jessica Weidler coming over from Grosse Pointe South. He was originally at Hazel Park. So, so that's an interesting storyline to say the least right there. West Bloomfield, I really like this team. I talked to Zach Hilbers about the Lady Lakers. I'm going to respectfully disagree with Hilbers on this team because I think Burt Mosley coming there was a great hire. But I'm going to respectfully disagree on this team. I think West Bloomfield could be a really interesting team to keep an eye on. Now, they're lacking size, but they make up for it with quickness. Very similar to Southfield Arts and Tech. But I think West Bloomfield's quickness could get them somewhere this year. It really does. Blue Division, keep an eye on Avondale. Phil Dawson's team, when healthy, really solid, really dangerous. Could be a team to keep an eye on. When you look at Berkeley, they got a new coach in there. You have Olivia DeCaro, can make some noise. Hazel Park's another one to keep an eye on in that Blue Division. Oxford could be a team to watch in the white, along with Adams in the red division, along with Blue Bay Hills. Troy could be a team to keep an eye on, and Seaholm. Maybe Troy Athens, put them in that mix. So a lot of interesting things happen this upcoming year in girls basketball. Of course, I'll have more in depth when it comes to girls basketball later in the year, as we get closer to the regular season. Boys basketball, of course, the red division, no one's touching Clarkson. They really don't have no true weaknesses. They've got a lot of transfers in there. They're senior heavy, 4 division prospects. Nothing you can say. For Clarkson, this could be a repeat championship year. Really could be. West Bloomfield could give him a challenge, but I don't think they're going to match up with Clarkson. They got athleticism and talent. Troy maybe with Jason Dees, but they got others. It's just nobody's touching Clarkson in that red division. I'm sorry. Nobody is. Maybe Hazel Park, I don't think they have enough depth. They're talented, but I don't think West Bloomfield, Troy, or Hazel Park or anybody in that division, like South Arts Tech, North Farmington, Blue Bay Hills, they're not touching Clarkson this year. Nobody is. They really aren't. Serious. White division, when you look at them, Oak Park obviously is going to be favored. Very athletic, talented. Stony Creek gives some problems. They have 3 very good players. You look at Mike Molinari, Jericho Barr-Edmond, Nate Davis. I think Stony Creek will be a challenge for them. Troy Athens, of course, Tara McCaskill. I really think losing Cotton to Harrison's going to hurt this team. Oxford could be a team to keep an eye on as well. They lost a ton of talent, but when you have players like Noah Harding and Michael Rash, they're never out of it. Oxford's a team to keep an eye on this upcoming season. Groves, maybe, even though they're going to be very young. They have Dan Gilbert's son on that team. Seaholm, of course, with Brady Flynn, they could be a team to keep an eye on. So that'll be interesting to see what happens there. And then the blue division, of course, you look at, I think personally it could be a 4-team race in that division, but I think Lake Orion and Rochester, I think they're top 2 right now. Lake Orion's got a ton of experience back. They only won 4 games last year. Of course, when you have a team, of course, it's going to be led by Jamie Lewis. You have Pierce Burke, Casey Stronach. They got to address a little bit of things up front with the guards. So, but you have a guy in guy in the makings than Nate Talbot. So, we'll see what Lake Orion's got. They got a deep bench as well. So, a guy to watch out for. I think to be a starter in that team's Drew Crane. And I think he could be a key figure in that team. So we'll see what the Dragons have this upcoming season. Rochester's another team to keep an eye on. They have Vance Kirkwood, their head coach. They have a ton of talent. But we'll see how their mindset is. We'll see how Vance Kirkwood's going to do with that team. The mindset's a question mark. Farmington's another one to keep an eye on for Coach Terrence Porter. Pontiac's another one as well. But keep an eye on Berkeley as well. I mean, Berkeley can make some noise this year. Berkeley's got a senior-heavy team coming up. They got a vet. I mean, Joe Sermo's really high on this team. So that's a team to keep an eye on. Ferndale's another one as well because they got a ton of experience back. They only lose one player from last year's team. The bulk of their team's back. So Ferndale's a team to keep an eye on going forward in that one. So we'll see what happens going forward there. Now let's go back to football. Of course, what's preview the games this week, of course, my projections and why that's going to happen. First, we're going to go from the red division. Of course, you got Clarkson taking out West Bloomfield. It's in the swamp. When you look at that matchup, I think that it's going to come, if it comes down to line plays, advantage Clarkson. I think when you look at this team, in all reality, I think personally, I really think that Clarkson's going to be a team that's going to do some damage. But West Bloomfield could do some damage against Clarkson's secondary. I really do think that Bryce Beasley is going to do some damage in that one. So I'm going to take West Bloomfield over Clarkson this one because I think that Bryce Beasley, having an experienced quarterback there, having a very solid weapons like what West Bloomfield's got, I think West Bloomfield's going to go in and it's at home for West Bloomfield, so I think they're going to go in there and beat Clarkson. It's not going to be an easy game, but either way, I think Clarkson's going to be I think West Bloomfield is going to beat Clarkson really, really close, high octane shootout. I think it's going to be a good shootout there in that one. Lake Orion, Troy Athens. It looks like these two teams are mirror image of each other. But when you look at Lake Orion, I think Lake Orion's in much better shape than Troy Athens, despite the fact that Troy Athens is at home and it's their homecoming. I like Lake Orion in that matchup because of their running attack. I think that Dylan Frank's in a huge game against Troy Athens. I also think that when you look at this team, this team clearly misses Johnny Haggett. I think he'll be back this week. Troy Athens, of course, they've gone through a lot this year as well. So these are really two mirror images of each other going against each other. But I think Lake Orion wins this one. I think pretty convincingly in this one over the Redhawks. Let's go to Oxford and Southfield Arts and Tech. In this one here, I really like Southfield Arts and Tech. I think too much athleticism, too much. And, of course, I think you're going to wear and tear Oxford down. So, it's going to be tough for Oxford down there at Southfield Arts and Tech anyway because it's a 5:30 start. So I really like the Warriors in that one. And then the game between Rochester Adams and Bloomfield Hills at Bloomfield Hills, of course, this is a game of two different styles. I mean, in this one here, I really like Adams in this one. And, yeah, Adams is going to have – I think Bloomfield Hills will score points in this one. But I think playing the veer option is going to be too much of a hassle. I think the veer option is going to keep Paddock and his friends at bay. I think the difference is going to be Steven Roncelli going to have a great big game in that one against a really good, really talented Bloomfield Hills defense. But I think Adams with the veer is going to be a big difference maker in that matchup. So I really like Adams in that one to knock off Bloomfield Hills. And a really good close game at Bloomfield Hills. Will be really close there. Let's go to the white division. Of course, this week's games, we got Stony Creek taking on Troy. Of course, that's played at Stony Creek. I ranked Troy 9th in the poll this week, of course, but I think Stony Creek's played a much more tougher schedule, though, than Troy. So I really like Stony Creek in this matchup to beat Troy. I mean, Troy's got a really good running back in Terrence Kennard. But I think Stony Creek, of course, playing that schedule, of course, playing Harrison last week, they should be hungry to get back. Of course, the key is going to be Stony Creek's line up front. And if they dress their line, I think Stony Creek could do some damage. And I think they could beat Troy. I mean, they could beat Troy. I think they're going to beat Troy this week. Harrison and Seaholm, this is a must-win game for Seaholm. I mean, for Harrison, of course, winning last week was huge. I think it's going to be really interesting to say the least in that one. So I'm going to take, you know what? I'm going to take the ladder. I'm going to take the upset. I'm going to take Seaholm. I think Seaholm will go and beat Harrison in their home field. I think the veer is going to be a huge important factor in that one. Now, Harrison scored 47 last week, but but when you look at Seaholm, they're hungry, they're ready to go, and they need this game pretty bad. I think the best game in the white is going to be Groves and Oak Park. That's in Beverly Hills. Of course, last year Groves beat Oak Park at Oak Park 13-12. But when you look at Oak Park, they should be motivated. They have not a lot of point in the league this year. So I think that's going to change. Of course, Groves only allowed 3 points. That was the Stony Creek. But in this matchup here, two evenly matched teams going against each other. But I think when you look at talent-wise, I got Oak Park getting revenge in Beverly Hills against Groves. I think Oak Park's going to tell everybody why this team is solid. They're back. I think Oak Park does some damage this week over in Beverly Hills because of their talent, because of Dwan Mathis at quarterback. You know, I think he's going to be a difference maker. And Oak Park's got a really good defense. So, you know, their defense is going to be a difference maker in that matchup. So I think Oak Park's going to be, they're going to do some damage, especially with that defense, especially what happened against Utica Eisenhower a couple weeks ago, where they were just, they were not good, gave 24 points. But, you know, this is a team, I think Oak Park, they're going to be a force to reckon with. And last but not least, got Berkeley-Rochester in that white division. Of course, we got, in that one, I'm going to take Rochester because of senior experience, of course, and it's a home game for Rochester. So, you know, Berkeley, I don't think really got much of a chance in this one. I think it's going to be a long night for the Bears in that one. And then last but not least, we got the blue division. Of course, we got Ferndale, Troy Country Day. I think for Ferndale, it's going to be a really tough matchup for them. At the end of the day, I think it's going to be I'm going to take the Troy Country Day in that one over Ferndale. I think too much depth is going to be an issue in that one. But I think Ferndale's going to score. They're going to score some points. But the Troy Country Day right now is a much different team, playing in Detroit, playing in Birmingham, which is going to be really tough for Ferndale. So it's going to be a challenge for them in that one. Pontiac, Royal Oak, you know, Royal Oak disappointed me last week. I think they're going to beat Pontiac, though, convincingly. Pontiac's really struggling to score points. I mean, they showed progress, but, you know, but Royal Oak only scored 7 points last week. So when you look at Royal Oak, I think it could be a close game, but I think Royal Oak at the end of the day will have enough to beat Pontiac. It won't be an easy game, but I think Royal Oak will beat Pontiac in that one. Avondale, North Farmington at North Farmington. This is going to be a really interesting matchup. And, you know, Bouchez's team really had a nice showing against Pontiac. Now they're going against Avondale. Avondale had a big win last week over Ferndale. I mean, when you really look at Avondale, this is a team that really could do some damage. And then I think North Farmington will be competitive in this one, but at the end of the day, I think it's too much athleticism in Avondale's front. I think the Yellow Jackets will beat the Raiders. It could be closer than people think, but at the end of the day, I'm going to take Avondale over North Farmington. And last but not least, we got Farmington, Hazel Park, of course. It's at Hazel Park. Hazel Park's rolling right now because their defense has been playing very well. I think their offense will have a big game this week. I think Hazel Park takes down Farmington this week, and it's not even going to be close. So when you look at that matchup, at the end of the day, I'm taking Hazel Park to knock off Farmington, and it was not even going to be close. So we'll see what happens going forward in that one. Okay, now everybody, I'm signing off here. Wish everybody the best of luck this week. Of course, stay tuned to the Inside the OA blog for OAA activities and also the Dragon's Den for Lake Orion Athletics. So we'll see what happens this upcoming week. So I'm going to sign off here. Take care, everybody. Good luck, and see you all next week. Bye-bye, everybody.